Welcome to Hidden Histories.
The year was 1972. The world mourned as the Munich Olympics were marred by a deadly terrorist attack. Scandal dominated the news in the wake of the Watergate break-in. Chuck Berry's My Ding-a-Ling was rocketing up the pop charts, and Deep Throat, an X-rated film, was one of the year's 5 highest-grossing pictures. Amidst this cultural wasteland, in a plush Chicago mansion, magic was afoot, as Gary Gygax perfected a universe. His friend, John Madden, was breaking the line and calling a challenge.
Why can't I be a troll, man? I want my character to be a troll.
Gygax, always unable to put himself in someone else's shoes, called a timeout to explain the complex rulebook.
Well, John, a troll essentially has to be a non-player character. In order for you to be a troll, even at your maximum intelligence would be extremely impaired, mental. Which for you, John, makes sense. But this removes the element of choice from the player, which is essential to my system.
Well, if the shoe fits, Gary.
This was the true beginning of the National Football League. In 1967, in Chicago, Illinois, Gary Gygax, an amateur occultist, obsessive note-taker, and wargaming enthusiast, stood in line at a convenience store with a plan to purchase a grape slushie. In front of him, a young John Madden was trying to purchase a six-pack of Budweiser beer. He was $1 short. A sympathetic but also impatient Gygax pulled $1 out of his pocket and handed it off to Madden. The response from Madden changed the history of both role-playing games and American sports forever. Thank you, dear Squire. Gygax was instantly enamored with the young Madden's chivalry. He threw his slushie away, purchased his first alcoholic beverage ever, and after noting Madden's debt in his ledger, invited him to the basement apartment in his stepmother's house to get blitzed and talk Tolkien. Gygax described a fantasy role-playing game based on the work of their mutual favorite author J.R.R. Tolkien, the author of Tree and Leaf and the lesser-known and underappreciated Lord of the Rings trilogy. It involved a system in which each person who played the game assumed a role and also rolled a dice to decide the outcomes of their actions. In other words, a role-playing game. As Madden downed beer after beer and Gygax gingerly sipped on his 1 12-ounce Rainier, a plan was formed. They would create a game for the imagination, the world of Dungeons and Dragons. Gary Gygax was born at home in Gumlog, Georgia in 1948 to Gregory Gabe Gygax and Gertrude Gertie Garris. It was an incredibly difficult birth due to Gary's abnormally large and noticeably abnormal right foot. Gertie, unfortunately, did not survive. Regardless of starting life out on the wrong foot, Gygax excelled in his studies as a young man and pridefully maintained his virginity throughout his youth, getting his foot in the door at several computer camps and really finding his footing in the scouting program. Gygax also put his best foot forward in his scholastic career, getting a step up on his peers. Within a month, the two were busily developing Gygax's system, shuttered in his basement apartment. On October 5th, 1968, Gygax wrote in one of his many work journals,
Still fine-tuning line of sight mechanics. Need to fix saving throws, no rerolls. Beholder is somewhat overpowered. Also, after stepmother brought down chocolate chip cookies, John said, "You should be glad your mom kicked the bucket. Your stepmom's got a real nice tight end." And then, unprompted, "She's a real wide receiver. Why won't he pay me my $1?
John Madden was born in 1947 in the small town of Canton, Ohio, making him 1 year older than Gary Gygax. Madden was born into a well-heeled family. His parents were television producers, known for their 1974 television remake of The Red Badge of Courage, and deeply involved in the Civil War reenactment community. After dipping their toes in the water, they went in feet first in 1980 as they produced a television show based on John's childhood called Silver Spoons. Then, Reaching the pinnacle of their producing career, they were associate producers for the 1989 Academy Award-winning documentary, My Right Foot. On his 9th birthday, John received a first edition of The Lord of the Rings. Each night, a different servant would read a chapter aloud at John's bedtime, and the next day, John would illustrate the stories on the very pages of the priceless book itself. He became an avid fan. At age 18, his parents footed the bill for a 28-room bungalow in Chicago, formerly known as the Castle of H.H. Holmes, and began kicking down a monthly allowance of $3,000 a week so that Madden could pursue his dream, writing the great American novel, Troll Wars. With the D&D system built, Gygax and Madden decided it was time to get their feet wet and begin playtesting. Madden suggested they playtest his campaign at his home due to Gygax's apartment lacking both space and chairs. In anticipation of the long campaign, Gygax purchased 24 90-minute cassette tapes to record the game for his notes, and he pressed record on his cassette recorder as he and his two friends, Peter Eastman and Kevin Laird, arrived at Madden's estate.
Reptiles are way too general. We need something more specific.
Whoa, side rep thing.
Holy cow!
May I help you?
Is John home?
Master is in the dungeon. Walk this way. I will show you to the parlor.
The three waited for 7 hours until finally Madden made his entrance. Madden, wearing a wizard's hat, rode into the parlor on a small miniature train.
Dungeons and Dragons World!
He produced a marijuana cigarette that had been rolled from the pages of The Lord of the Rings, first edition.
Hey, alright! Who's ready to do some Tolkien with Tolkien?
In his 1992 memoir, Chasing the Dragon, Gygax wrote,
I could not believe what I was seeing. What decadence Madden lived in. This so-called friend, who wouldn't even repay a single dollar, not even a quarter or a nickel back. I could not understand.
Gygax had spent weeks planning every detail of a campaign called The Winged Dragons of Glesh Somoth, but immediately abandoned it. His steely gaze fell upon Madden as he whispered,
I call this campaign a maddening.
Dungeon Master Gygax handed out pristine typed character sheets to each of the players. After 6 hours, all of the player characters found themselves starving as they wandered onto the farm of a great and evil wizard. Kevin, a dwarf mage, had been previously poisoned by a toad, and Peter, a human fighter man, had been extremely burned from an earlier run-in with a gelatinous cube. Merryweather spied a giant goat in one of the wizard's stables.
I want to eat the goat, but I gotta, kill it first, right?
You're gonna kill the giant goat. Are you sure you don't want to just ride it? I hear these things can really buck, if you catch my drift.
I am the thief. I will find a way, and I want some baby back goat ribs.
Jesus. Okay, John. I'll need you to roll a 1d20. Only a roll of a 1 will save you.
Oh yeah! There we go!
A furious Gygax immediately began crossing out entries in his nearby game notebook.
I've made a few changes. 1 is now the worst number you can roll.
What the?
I've just realized
Gary,
it
what?
makes more sense than the roll would be worse. As I said, as you approach the goat from behind, it is instantly aware of your presence. 1 kick from its great and mighty hoof instantly crushes your sternum and deflates both your lungs and sends you flying into the air, creating a great arc in the sky before you eventually ascend into the heavens themselves and land in a heap at the feet of your dungeon master, who then reaches down into your pocket and extracts exactly 1 gold piece, and thus ends the halfling Merryweather.
Out of my house! Get out of my house!
Eastman and Laird met with a Silmaril fate. Gygax and Madden would never speak again. and Madden would live the rest of his days in a quest for revenge. That fall, Gygax released his role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons, and in a massive feat of defiance, Madden obtained a small loan from Berkeley, California-based venture capitalist Wilbur Smith and began working on his own unauthorized video game adaptation of Dungeons & Dragons for Mattel's Intellivision video game system. The game was pure theft. Following in the footsteps of Gygax, the game used the same Dungeons & Dragons ability charts. Strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. As well as all of the monster names from D&D such as orcs, kobolds, beholders, gelatinous cubes, and of course, trolls. Upon release, Madden's video game Dungeons & Dragons received a fantastic reception, shattering records and establishing a foothold for the Intellivision as the world's premier home video game system. Gygax immediately put his foot down, filed suit, and changed the name of his own game to Advanced Dungeons & Dragons in an attempt to delineate it from what he perceived as a bastardized digital facsimile of his system, an illegal bootleg. The trial was short and simple. Madden lost his socks. But the penalty couldn't dissuade Madden. He decided to tackle the situation head-on and was quickly back on his feet. He immediately began crafting a new game, still based on Dungeons & Dragons and keeping the system of abilities in place, but he dressed it up to look like something entirely different. To emotionally injure Gygax, Madden chose to name his game Football, referring to Gygax's largely abnormally large foot that had killed his mother. Madden also chose to expose the other scars in their relationship, including the old debt, renaming several of the monsters after the amounts he refused to pay.
Can I get my full dollar back? Half back? Can I get a quarter back? A nickel back? Your stepmom's got a real nice tight end. She's a real wide receiver.
What Madden envisioned as the most important character, the whole dollar back, was later changed to the center. In the fall of 1974, the first iteration of Madden Football was ready to touch down at retail. But after the very public and widely publicized court case surrounding his Dungeons & Dragons video game, John knew he needed a fresh angle to kick off the series. He hired future Academy Award-winning makeup artist Rick Baker to build a costume to be donned by then-unknown actor Andy Serkis, who would portray the mascot Madden had dubbed the Madden Troll. For the second time, Madden had a hit on his hands. In one of his many personal journals, Gygax wrote,
I may have won the court case, but John continues to troll me. I believe it is time for me to place a proper curse.
The rest of the entry is indecipherable and appears to be largely a strange amalgamation of occult and religious symbols strung together in no logical manner. John Madden Football's smashing success drew the attention of his parents' good friend and head of the Tri-County Civil War Reenactor Society, Dr. Vince Lombardi. After a short negotiation, Madden and Lombardi reached an agreement. Lombardi would license the game and bring it to the real world with the help of his reenactors. He would call his company the National Football League. The first season was a bloody affair. It was, like the video game, without a ball of any sort or any kicking, and it mostly consisted of players striking each other with heavy steel weapons on a pristinely pedicured green field. The public outcry was loud, 33 deaths in 1 year, and to avoid government intervention, Lombardi reluctantly changed the rules the following season. He introduced a ball, removed steel armaments, and only allowed players to use their heads as a weapon. He also introduced a play in which the ball is kicked by a player, stating,
Look, I'll tell you what, we had to put that kicking play in there. We had to have some sort of, a ball-to-foot contact, because then it was confusing for people. That and the fact that it's already the name of the most popular sport on the planet.
For the past 40 years, the NFL, Madden Football, Dungeons & Dragons, and their legacy have all been hugely influential on our culture. Andy Serkis went on to appear in over 100 commercials as the Madden Troll. In 1987, during a shoot for Tenactin in icy Alaska, Serkis left his costume lying on the floor of his dressing room when he went out for a cigarette. It was found by an intern who believed the costume to be an actual person, and an on-set doctor was summoned. He was severely injured trying to revive the lifeless bodysuit, and so ended Serkis's tenure as the Madden Troll. The Madden Troll is widely believed to be the spiritual inspiration for the animated character Shrek, and in a case of art reflecting life, Andy Serkis would go on to portray a troll in Peter Jackson's cult classic film adaptation of Tolkien's obscure Lord of the Rings. The National Football League has led to numerous discoveries about the nature of the human brain. Dungeons & Dragons is still one of the most popular games in the United States, consistently renewing interest in and opening doors to the occult for one generation after the next. Madden remains a popular game not only to play, but also to watch via esports channels such as the Twitch and YouTubes. In 2020, Madden may once again be the only football that exists. In 2019, Gygax and Madden appeared together on stage at the San Diego Comic-Con and got along smashingly, although they did not speak directly to one another. During the question and answer portion, a young woman in the audience asked Gygax about the internet rumor he had put a curse on the Madden series, wherein every athlete that appears on the cover of the game box would suffer a major setback the following year. Gygax put down the small notebook he had been writing in throughout the panel, opened his briefcase, and spent 51 uninterrupted seconds digging through and examining old notebooks until he finally pulled out a tattered black copy with a strange symbol painted in fingernail polish on its cover. He opened it, appeared to cross something out on its page, and then addressed the young woman.
It is lifted.
That year's cover athlete Patrick Mahomes went on to lead his team to a Super Bowl victory and won the NFL's Most Valuable Player Award, as well as the NFL's Most Normal Foot Award, marking the first time a man with an abnormal foot had been awarded the prize.
But no, that does not apply to saving throws. If you're playing with teeth, then it's best not to have an attitude, cause I'm the dungeon master. I control every latitude from here to there, to the monsters you meet, all the items that you find and the people you greet. I got elves and gnomes, I got blacksmiths and mariners. In fact, I've got infinite unplayable characters. I'm a madman with some dice in my hands. Just let me flip through my books, then my devices and plans will start to take shape like the formation of lands. I'll turn this dungeon into a nation of man. You'll see visions through etherealize, you'll see spirits as they materialize, and pretty soon you'll start blurring the lines between reality and fantasy, the earth in your mind. Come on, game with me, but you better have a strong spine. I'll get you hooked like EverQuest Online. Increasing your experience will take a long time, start to get delirious. Now make a song mine, game with me, but you better have a strong spine. I'll get you hooked like EverQuest Online. Increasing your experience will take a long time, start to